Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of the Teaching Space Utilisation Survey Data video tutorial series. I'm Ben Morland, Director of Education Space Consultancy, and for this episode I'll be taking you through how to create site and building frequency, occupancy and utilisation tables and graphs using Microsoft Excel. I will be continuing to use the Teaching Space Utilisation example spreadsheet I worked through in the last episode, and if you'd like to download a copy of the version that outlines everything I go through in this episode, remember to check out the link below the video. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so now we're going to be carrying on from the same spreadsheet we're using in episode 2. And as you can see, it looks exactly the same. So what we're going to be doing in this episode is looking at institution and building, site and building even, frequency, occupancy and utilisation results. And for this, I'm going to create some separate sheets. So we're going to call the one we're on currently institution. Then we're going to create another sheet here called site and another sheet here called building. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this data here. Actually, we'll just grab it all. Press Ctrl C and copy it in. So to grab it all, I've just clicked this cell up here. Press Ctrl C and paste it in. So we're going to start with site, and to work out our site frequency, occupancy and utilisation rates, I'm going to be using the same, so I'll delete this first, don't need that graph. I'm going to be using the same formulas we used for creating the institution. So as you can see at the moment, this is looking at all the data set, but basically what I am going to do is narrow this data search down to only per site. So for each one of these. So I'm going to first of all sort this, grabbing the data, and we'll sort it by, make sure your data has headers on, site, values A to Z. And as you can see, it's sorted it now, site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 sites. So I'm then going to grab all these rows by just grabbing 1, 2, 2 and going down, pressing Ctrl C. And then I'm going to copy this in between site 1 and 2. So select where site 2 row, so that's 31 in this instance. Insert copy cells. So it comes up with a ref error just because it's looking for cells that don't exist. So I'm just going to delete the ref, everything inside those brackets, delete it, and then select all the cells that you want the formulas to be looking at, which is all your site 1 rows. And then press return. Copy it across because we know all our sums look at the same, or they're all sum functions just looking at different columns. And then for the average, again, get rid of your hashtag ref exclamation mark. And do the same, get rid of your hash, your ref and your exclamation mark for your count. Head on up, press return, and there you got your frequency, occupancy and utilisation results automatically calculated using those numbers we just changed there. So we know now that site 1, so let's just change this, has a frequency rate of 59.83% and occupancy rate of 37.67%, which gives it a utilisation rate of 22.53%. Now for the rest of these sites, I'm simply going to copy what I just did for site 1, paste it into site 2, and then change each of these 5 formulas again so that they only look at the data included for site 2. So for this, I'm just going to remove that and then select the data that I want it to look at. So I'm just going to pause it here while I carry on doing the rest of the sites, and then we'll meet back up in a second. Okay, so now as you can see, we have our site 1, our site 2, our site 3, 4 and 5 frequency, occupancy and utilisation rates all in. And as I said, I just did that exactly the same. So if we have a look at site 5, we'll just have a look at each one. We can see that the blue rectangle is only looking at the data for site 5. And that ensures that the frequency, occupancy and utilisation results are correct and are only looking at the site 5 data. So next, although it's great having it like this, we might want to have it in a more concise way where we can easily see and then compare the sites in one table. So for this, we are going to put this data, all these ones in the yellow boxes, down into one table form down here. So an easy way to do this is to grab our frequency, occupancy and utilisation. We'll just copy that. I'm just going to paste it down there. And then I'm just going to put site 1, site 2, site 3, site 4, and site 5 along there. And I'm going to grab So we're going to do equals, select on frequency, press return, and then copy that cell, paste it down for your occupancy utilization. And what that does is that it just looks at the cells below. So it's looking at your right occupancy and it's looking at your right utilization. So again, I'm just going to do exactly the same for site 2. I'll show you how I do this one. So do exactly the same, press equals, come up to here, press frequency, press return, and it's copied it down. I'm just going to pause it quickly while I just fill out the rest. Okay, now as you can see, we have all our frequency, occupancy, and utilization rates for each of our sites. So the importance of doing the equals function rather than just copying them down, it means that if you have to, for any reason, change any of the data, or you notice you've made a mistake when selecting your data for your formulas, is that say, oh, I've noticed actually this was like this. So if we look at our sites 5, it was 18.55, it will change slightly now. So we know it was like that. So what we can do is we can just change the formulas here and it'll automatically change your main table down at the bottom. But if you had, for instance, just copied and pasted these down as values, and then let me just change that percentage to give you a demonstration, and then we had changed this so it looked at different cells, you can see only this one changed and this one didn't. So it just saves a bit of time, and inevitably you might make some mistakes along the way, and this way just make sure that it all loops up and you're trying to minimize the amount of work you have to redo along the way. So next what I'm going to do is just put this into a table. So I'm just going to press our grid button there. I'm going to centralize all. I'm going to put these as yellow. And then just so it looks a bit more neater, I'm going to make them all the same size, like that. And then simply, as we've done in the previous episodes, we're just going to do a column. This is done it by site, so that's the way around we want it. So format our axes, change it to 1 as we do on all others previously. Press close, actually click it. And then you have your site 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 frequency, occupancy, and utilization rates. So as you can see, just by looking at the graph, you can see that site 1 has the highest frequency rate, site 2 has the highest occupancy rate, and it looks like site 4 has the highest utilization rate. So we can just quickly check back here. So as we can see, yes, site 4 has the highest utilization rate of 25.25%. So I'm just going to quickly give this one a title. I'm just going to call this our site frequency, occupancy, and utilization rates. Okay, let's make that slightly larger. So we've got our table and graph for our site, and next we're going to move on to our buildings. So as you may have guessed, what I'm going to do is exactly the same thing as before. I'm going to delete my graph, copy this. No, before I do that, I'm going to grab my data, sort it by building. This stage is critical, so do remember to sort first. Go back down, grab my formulas, Control C or copy, find the gap between the blocks, and I'm going to insert the copy cells. So what I'm going to do now quickly is pause it again to save you some time, and I'm going to read all the formulas as I did before and then show you what they look like come the end. Okay, so now as you can see, we've got all our small frequency, occupancy, and utilization tables for each one of our blocks. So let's pick an example. We've got E block here. So as you can see, our sum functions, all looking at the right data, as is our average, as is our count. Our frequency is only feeding off the data that we want it to, as is our occupancy, and our utilization is simply multiplying our frequency and occupancy. So then I'm going to do another table at the bottom, exactly the same as we did for site. So I won't spend too much time looking at this on this video, but what I will show you is actually what you can do to save a couple of seconds of time is just put your equals on your A block and then control copy it down, and that gets your data in. Saves you having to write them out each time. So what I'm going to do now is do exactly the same for B block. Copy them down. I'm just going to pause it again and quickly put them all in. Okay, so Now we have all our data in table format and it's all tidied up. What we want to do now is just create some graphs. So what you can do is just create a column graph showing all your data. So it says all your building frequency, occupancy and utilization rates with your buildings on the X and your percentages on the Y. But what you might want to do, as this doesn't really show it too clearly in terms of being able to compare, is, I'll just delete this, is sort it out by frequency, occupancy and utilization rates. So what you can do is copy, and we'll just do an equals function even, and we'll do it over the same amount up to n. Okay, so now we have our table, and what you can do is just create a graph that shows all your data. But as you can see, it's quite difficult to compare and see how each building compares to each other for all the different frequency, occupancy and utilization rates. Frequency blue, occupancy red, utilization in green. So what you can do is we'll just delete that, and I'm going to copy our frequency as an example here and paste this in as a value. And then I'm going to grab this here, and I've just clicked on 2, 2 and 2, 3, and I'm going to sort this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go options, sort left to right. I'm going to sort from row 2, 2, 3, smallest to largest. And what that's done is it's put the block with the smallest frequency rate on the far left and the block with the highest frequency rate on the far right. And then I'm going to insert, first of all, I'm just going to insert some cells there. Type in frequency. And then what I'm going to do, grab all the data, put in a column, and there you have your frequency. But what I should have done before, but we can do that now instead, is change this to a percentage. And there you've got it. You've got your frequency from lowest to highest. So this is probably the most useful way of looking at each of them individually rather than having them all together. Okay, I'm going to quickly pause it and do all of them together now. And now, as you can see, we've created our frequency, occupancy and utilization tables separately. I've sorted them by lowest to highest, as you can see on each of these. And then we've created a graph off of each, just doing exactly the same method of selecting your data and inserting a column graph. And it does exactly the same thing and creates you a graph for each. So then what you can do is you can quickly just see how your blocks are comparing to each other. So as you can see, D block has the lowest occupancy rate here, whilst E block has the highest occupancy rate. And for utilization, F block is performing the worst, and we can quickly check how bad it is. It's 5.60%, whilst E block is performing the best with a utilization rate of 31.9%. So, as you can see, it's pretty straightforward in terms of creating your site and building tables and graphs. It takes a little bit of time, but once you put it together, you can create some outputs that you can really use to demonstrate how each are being used. And that's it for this episode. I hope you found this video helpful. As with all these episodes, if you'd like to download the spreadsheet containing all the formulas, just click on the download link below. Also, if you'd like to ask any questions, please feel free to contact me directly using the email address shown on this slide, or feel free to leave your comments in the box below. For the next episode, I'm going to be taking a look at how to create space-type frequency, occupancy and utilization tables and graphs, so remember to check this out. Finally, if you found this and previous episodes helpful, please do let others know by sharing via social media. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.